Welcome to iPad Pros, the show all about using your iPad to be productive and get work done. I'm Tim Chen, host of the show.
Hello there, and welcome to another episode of iPad Pros. In this episode, we'll be joined once again by Wes Hilliard to dive into all of the iPadOS 26 goodies, and we've been both using it for the past since the keynote, so over a week now, and lots of thoughts here that we're going to just dive into. Wes is an iPad native. That's his primary computer, and so lots of kind of workflow stuff that I'm sure he's been diving into and using. As a reminder, you can support this podcast over at patreon.com/iPadPros or by subscribing in Apple Podcasts. And great thanks to everyone that supports the show. With that, here's my discussion with Wes all about iPadOS 26. Welcome back to the podcast, Wes.
Hi, it's like I never left, or maybe we recorded something else recently.
Yeah. So if you're into the Vision Pro, Wes is also on the most recent episode of Vision Pros, where we kind of dive into that platform as well. So this is a double header podcast recording, which I don't do that often. So it's kind of fun to have this back to back here.
Thankfully, there is so much to talk about. I mean, we already somehow spent more than an hour on Vision OS, and that was barely a tweak by comparison to iPadOS.
Yes. Now, I must say, since the last episode of iPad Pros, I now finally, Wes, after over a year, have a Magic Keyboard for my M4 iPad Pro. I've been holding off for, is there actually going to be a sale on this thing? Mm-hmm. But I eventually just gave up and went with Best Buy's Open Box Excellent at $184. The white one was $40 cheaper than the black variant. So I got the white one for my black M4 iPad Pro 11-inch, and it's quite a nice piece of kit. So, the new windowing stuff that we'll talk about really pushed me over the edge to have a more permanent solution for keyboard and trackpad on this platform.
Yeah, I love the Magic Keyboard. If I'm not in my office, that's what I'm using. It's really nice. The trackpad really is very well executed. But I wanted to mention before we got too deep into the show, just from the top, because this is iPad Pros, and I feel like people would expect for us to be recording from the new iPad feature. And I'm going to explain why we're not. So
yeah, we're not, and there are reasons. One reason could be that it's a beta and it could crash. And we tried with Riley Hill's episode for him to use local capture, and it failed because his iPad didn't have enough storage and just crapped out on him by the end. So that is something they don't tell you if you're low on storage to this will break and not work. They need to have some UI for storage requirements, and there's nothing for that right now.
So a recent episode of Apple Insider, the one that came out after WWDC, so William does a summary the minute WWDC's keynote is over. So not that one, but that Friday's episode, we recorded entirely from my iPad. We encountered one significant issue. I use a microphone that has no gain control. The Mac.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, the Mac has gain control in settings. So I can go into settings and say, take my input volume and just turn it down ever so slightly. And then it evens it out. I have a loud booming voice. It's bass heavy. And I speak relatively close to the microphone. So all of it is getting captured. Without gain control, it blows everything up. Peak, not just peak, but just blow out of proportions. It is staticky, loud, booming audio without gain control.
So you need new microphone. You need a new microphone to use local capture, basically.
Yes. So iPad has no gain control currently. There is a feedback, I believe, that Jason Snell has put in. I don't have it offhand, but I linked to it in a blog post that I wrote about this. We'll include a link to my blog in the show, but it's kind of silly that it's not there, so I'm hoping this is more of an oversight than anything.
Yeah.
It feels like it shouldn't be that hard. Again, I'm not a developer, so I don't know how hard things are, but it should be something they should add anyway. It's a feature that's necessary. But you're right. In the meantime, I have another option. I could buy a new microphone. I'm not against it. I've used this one for a while. I've enjoyed it. It's the Audio Technica 2100X.
That's what I'm using.
Yep. Good mic, no gain control. So for now, I'm back to where I was. I'm connected to my Mac Mini, which is on a bookshelf. I'm looking at Vision. I'm wearing my Vision Pro and looking at my Mac desktop remotely. and doing the show. That's how I've always done Apple Insider, and that's how I'm doing this.
Yeah, and as I talked about in my last episode, it's still too limited for what I would want. Because as a podcast host, I want to have a backup audio of my guest, because I can't depend on, like, the guest might not have enough storage on their iPad or iPhone, and the recording doesn't save properly. That could happen. So I want a way to capture my guest's audio, and that still is not an option with local capture.
Actually, so this is funny. It kind of is. So I recorded the Apple Insider podcast. I recorded locally with local capture, which generates. The way local capture works is it generates a file in the Files app of whatever your completed audio is. And then there's the other option. If you're on FaceTime, you can record your call using the FaceTime feature, which adds a final audio recording to Notes as a shared note for the call. We did both simultaneously.
Okay.
And it worked. We did the whole show on FaceTime through the local and the FaceTime audio recording, and it all worked fine.
Now the FaceTime, it would be both both sides of the conversation on a single track.
Yes,
and that's the problem, right? Yeah.
Well, that's how we do Apple Insider. Actually, we record on Riverside, and Riverside does both tracks, and then we each record our local tracks, which is how we normally do.
Yeah, so I guess that'd be like break glass in case of emergency, because really I want the guest in one track, me in the other track, so I can cut out one side if needed.
Yeah, so William still recorded his local track, I recorded my local track, and then we had a dual track recorded through FaceTime.
Yeah.
The issue that we encountered, which I don't think there's a way to turn this off, there's an audio warning in FaceTime.
Oh, that this is about to record. Yeah.
So it's not the issue is at the front it says this phone call is now being recorded. That's fine. The issue is periodically throughout the call, you get this little chime ding, like ding, ding, ding.
Right. And
it's part of the recording.
Yes.
It's included. So if you're talking and that happens, there's a way around this. As podcasters, if you don't know when it's coming, but when it happens, all you do is just wait for it to stop and then just say exactly what you just said.
Right,
and then whoever's editing can remove it. It's not the end of the world. Again, it's not meant that dual recording of FaceTime is meant to be oh darn, our local got garbled or something went wrong, or you use it as a third track to align your other two tracks.
Sure, yeah.
That's what that's for, so you're not necessarily exporting that as your final track. But I'm glad that it's there, and technically now we can do the entire Apple Insider show from iPad on both ends if we wanted to safely.
No.
It's just no gain control, so no dice until
it's like such a nice godsend that's there, and I can actually do video podcasts now from iPad if I wanted to start doing video as well. I'm not sure if that'll be a thing at some point, but I do. It is sad that I want audio hijack because of the power that has versus just capture my local mic. But I know Apple probably won't give us that ever.
So I did find this isn't just about podcasting, right? So,
well, you can also use the phone app as well. If you're just taking you could do the podcast over iPhone. You're in the middle of nowhere, but you have a cell signal. You got 2 bars or whatever, a voice. You could just do a phone call and do a podcast that way.
And the AirPod microphones, especially, there's a beta that upgrades the voice isolation and audio quality of mic recording using AirPods. And they're not studio quality, but they are way better. They're passable. They're more than passable. It would just sound like a not as good show, but it would still be only the most difficult audio nerds would be like, "Hey, your voice sounds compressed." Yeah, while I'm using AirPods. So very passable. So yes, I could record in a hotel sitting on a bed with an iPhone and AirPods, and 9 out of 10 people probably wouldn't even notice. I'm still going to record from a nice microphone.
I mean, you could also hook up a nice microphone to your iPhone over USB-C if you want to. Yeah.
Yes. But I just the other use case though is we now have full audio intent control, which is a separate system. So we have local audio recording, but now we can go in and say select this microphone for this app, which is
Huge.
Desperately needed. Desperately needed. One use case for this that I tried to set up before that I now can't wait to try, which, again, this runs into the issue of the developers need to update, and we're in the developer beta, so I need a test flight, or we have to wait for Apple to release. That's a whole thing. But once this is done and the OS releases and the app updates, this will be killer for Camo Studio, because now I will be able to play. So I can Camo Studio is an app on iPad that lets me record my screen, record my audio, record through a camera. So now I will be able to hook a Nintendo Switch through a capture card, which is hooked to a Thunderbolt dock, which is hooked through my iPad Pro, and I will have that on my studio display, showing a capture of my Nintendo Switch, a capture of my cutout head floating in the corner, with my audio from the game and audio from my microphone all being synced across the stream perfectly and streaming through to Twitch. Completely now possible on iPadOS because of audio intent control.
Because before, what was the limitation? You wouldn't be able to get your microphone in there?
Okay, so the limitation was, and this is silly, the way audio intents worked before is whatever the last device was that connected is your microphone.
Oh, that's right.
So basically, Camo Studio on an iPad, the iPad microphone is the selected one. Connect it to the studio display. The studio display microphone is the microphone. Connect it to the capture card. The capture card's now the microphone. And then you connect your headset, and now your headset's the microphone, with no option to switch between the two. And even if Camo Studio gave you two microphones, which it couldn't originally, you would just have two redundant options selected to the last microphone you connected. There was a workaround. My capture card I was using allowed me to, on a Mac, open software and say mix audio coming from my headset and the game to these variables permanently, and then connect it back to the iPad, and the mixed audio file would come through. I would just have to make sure to unplug and then plug back in the capture card last.
Gotcha.
And but it was still so broken.
Baffling. Yeah, so this is so much better that developers will
so much
do
better.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, so much better.
And universal control. Is this a new ability? You could always use the Mac as a keyboard and trackpad for your iPad, but could you use the iPad as keyboard and trackpad for your Mac? Because you now can.
Yes. So universal control is a feature, I'm sure your listeners know, where you have your iPad set up, say it's in a Magic Keyboard, and you're next to a MacBook. And then on your MacBook, you scroll your cursor to the edge of the screen, and it kind of pops into your iPad, and now your cursor on your Mac is controlling the cursor on the iPad. The vice versa has always been true. If you were on your iPad and universal control is turned on, you can't initiate universal control from iPad without a Mac present. But if you go to the edge of the screen and pop over into your Mac, the trackpad connected to the iPad controls the cursor on the Mac. That has always also been true.
Okay. Because I just noticed that, and I thought that was pretty cool. And
it's nice.
Nice. And it was just not working a second ago. But then the thing you said were, you need to start from the Mac, and then you can use your iPad to then move it back, which is interesting.
Yeah, you can technically, if you've already set up universal control before, have your iPad open, and as long as your Mac is awake and unlocked, move the cursor to the edge of the screen, it will pop over to the Mac. Even if the session wasn't active before, it will find that Mac and start the session. It's just, I don't think you can start a session from scratch without that having been done before.
Gotcha. Yep. I thought that was pretty neat. So it's always been there. Windowing. I just want to talk a bit about Shortcuts app and Stage Manager. So Stage Manager, I think, is the new best way to do multitasking on iPad with this new unrestricted windowing system. And it's such a shame that Shortcuts isn't really aware of Stage Manager. If you have Stage Manager on, when you have a shortcut that says open like 5 or 6 different apps at these different places on your screen, it opens each of those in a brand new stage. And I would love a way to say, on stage 1, open these apps at these locations. On stage 2, do this. But currently, my only workaround I found is have turn Stage Manager off as an action. The very end of your workflow, your shortcut, set Stage Manager to turn it back on, and that'll combine all of those different apps into a new single stage. But there's no way that I found to have like multiple stages with different apps opening and stuff like that.
What we need on iPad, I guess, and this is silly, is spaces.
Yeah, Stage Manager is the Spaces replacement, I guess, for now.
Yeah, and honestly, I think what you're looking for is spaces, and that's would be easier to target in shortcuts because you could say because the spaces are named.
And yeah, they're permanent spaces, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back from the leopard days.
Yeah, it defaults to desktop 1, desktop 2. So in shortcuts or AppleScript, you can target spaces in Mac because they are named. Stages are in
temporary.
Stage Manager, they're temporary and they're not named. And maybe we should be able to name them or label them, or toggle a lock and say lock the stage, never let it disappear.
Yeah.
So theoretically, you could have an empty stage, but that stage always exists. That's tricky. Right now, you can still do the shift click and open an app into an active stage.
Yes. You can't hold down. I love if you could hold down shift while a shortcut is running to do similar stuff, but that does not work either.
Right. I think you're right. Like having shortcuts be able to open specific apps into a stage, having focus modes be able to organize and create stages, like those would be excellent power user tools. We're just not there yet.
Yeah, but it is cool if you're not using Stage Manager that you can tell it open this in middle third, left third, or a quarter of the screen, do different tiling stuff. Like it's all there, which is very powerful and neat.
One thing I need that isn't there is set window to always on top. So because what I want is a full screen Safari, and then I want to lock drafts floating above Safari. Because almost every website you go to, the left and right side is either it's not in use or it's full of ads. So let me just drop drafts into that left or right side, so I still have a full screen Safari experience. I'm getting that desktop size class, and then I have drafts always available, and I can always grab it and drag it and move it out of the way if something's underneath it. But if I click in Safari, even if it's to copy and paste something, drafts falls behind the window, and then I have to go back down to the dock and click drafts and open it back up.
Well, that's how it works on the Mac too. If you have a window and then you click into Safari, Safari hides whatever window is next to it.
There is an affordance in Mac OS, at least coding wise, to allow apps to lock to the top. Some apps like Notes apps, Music's app. Yeah, it's not like it's a permanent setting. This should be a system-wide setting, but there are apps that say keep always on top, and it makes it basically so a window can always be on top, even if you click out of it.
Didn't know that. Yeah, that's a cool API on the Mac. But yeah, overall, how are you finding this system? And are you now a Stage Manager convert like I am with the iPad, or what's your kind of feelings?
I've used Stage Manager since it came out, and I'm still using it. It's always been rough, and it's still kind of janky, but it's so much nicer.
Yeah, the fact that when you hit app number 5, it doesn't like decide, let me nuke this other app. The fact that you just like as many windows as you want, they can be in that stage pretty much. I think 12 maybe is the maximum or something.
16 gigs of RAM is 16 windows.
16 windows, okay. So that's what I got on both of my iPads, the M1 and my M4.
I haven't tested it yet. I don't know what this means for external monitors. So if I have an external monitor and an iPad, I don't think that technically means 32. I think it means 16 between the two of them.
Total, right.
But I haven't tested that yet. It's on the back of my mind, but I just haven't sat down in front of it to do it yet.
Yeah, most of the time when you're on an external monitor, do you just use the external monitor and don't really use the iPad screen as much?
No, I use both.
You use both, okay.
Because the way my workflows work, I'm writing. The main screen is my primary interaction for sure. I'm usually Safari and drafts side by side, and now, previously I would always have it set up so the iPad apps were sized in a way that they were side by side, and I could see the dock and see stages at all times. I've changed that habit now to have the apps essentially full screen, because now they can be side by side perfectly, and then there's a little dragger bar. I like that better, so I have them both as full as they can go to whatever size I want them to. So drafts is over in a not even 1/3, but like 1/5 of the screen, and then Safari's the rest of the display on the studio display.
Yeah.
And then on iPad, and that's like 90% of my work day. Those apps never really change. Like I'll open Mail full screen, or I'll open Reminders full screen, Files full screen, or maybe I'll open a very small files into that view. But generally speaking, that view doesn't change during the day. Then on iPad, that's my Slack, or I'll switch to Tapestry and Blue Sky side by side for social media checks and RSS feed checks. Like iPad is a reference screen. It's always there. It's always visible. And I'm interacting with it as I write as well, because sometimes I'll open something in the RSS feed, which is on the iPad, and I'll reference that as I'm writing on the main screen. So they're both pretty much fully in use.
So were you not running into the 4 window limit? Like, is 5 and beyond not a huge thing for your workflows, actually?
It's just not.
Yeah.
Someone commented, I wrote a write-up about everything new coming to iPadOS, more or less, and there's actually one on Apple Insider right now you can go read if you sign up for the newsletter. It's free, but it has a newsletter block on it. But if you sign up for the newsletter, you can see my 5 productivity like things for iPadOS 26, and one of them is the windowing system that I go into depth for. Someone commented, I believe 16 windows isn't enough, and I'm just like,
what are you doing?
First of all, what are you doing? Especially unless you have like so William Gallagher has a 46-inch wide screen display that like wraps around an entire
I think that'd be fun
planet.
with iPadOS. Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
I told him he needs to test that out on iPadOS, because
he definitely does.
He could have 16 windows side by side, right? Like that's madness. But
what iPad is he rocking these days?
Do it. I don't know which one he has. I think he does have some version of an iPad Pro with an M series, but I don't know.
But probably 8 gigs of RAM, I'm guessing, for him.
Probably M1, probably 8 gigs of RAM. So you can probably get 8 gigs of RAM, I believe, is
it 12?
It's not 1-to-1. Yes, I think 8 gigs of RAM is 12, and then 6 gigs of RAM is 8, and then 4 gigs of RAM is 4. If I might be, it's iffy, but
yeah, the bigger thing I ran into in the last episode is the iPad Mini. If it doesn't have an M chip, there's no external display support, so it's just mirroring like the iPad Mini screen on letterboxed. It's like, come on, guys, let's add external display support for iPads that have Apple Intelligence and stuff too.
To make this as easy as possible, nothing changed for Stage Manager. Nothing changed for external display support. What changed
is the windowing system.
Is split view and slide over is now gone, and the new windowing system is in its place. That's what changed. The rules for external display support have not changed.
Which makes it feel more crazy that they haven't, because of the fact that you have full windowing, but you can't have a native. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, so for me, I don't understand the workflows that need 16 windows at once. Even in a single stage, I kept opening apps to take a screenshot, and I think I hit 13, and I'm just like, I don't care anymore.
Yeah, like, what are you doing? I don't understand. Yeah, I don't understand it. It's on the iPad screen especially, but when you're on external, what are you doing with that needs more than 16 windows open to get your work done?
Well, this is getting into more, what's the word? Like psychology, but human nature makes us think that we can multitask, but science has proven time and time again that it is physically impossible for a human to do more than one thing at once. Because
like for me, like I'll have like maybe 5 or 6 open, because I'll have Fairrate open with my text description of the audio podcast. I'll copy that text into Safari, and I'll have like LumaFusion open exporting the video version of the podcast, and then I'll have the thumbnail thing. Then I'll have Pixelmator open. I'll Pixelmator open to like make the thumbnail. But like, I'm not going to hit 16 anytime soon, and I'm doing one thing at a time, but I need the other windows open just to have, be able to copy and paste between stuff easier and all that.
But you're only using one app at a time.
Yes.
You're not editing a photo with one hand and typing a dissertation with the other.
You may have a reference window open if you're like writing an article. It's you like referencing material that you glance at, but I don't know where you hit 16. And
even if you have 16 references, that's all in preview, and you just swipe between the references or open, right?
Now, you had a picture window, you can get to 17, I guess, right?
I'm not sure. I haven't tried, but the thing is you do you, right? This is the same conversation we've had about tabs. I don't have 500 tabs open. I currently have 2 tabs open for this podcast. I also use the tabbing systems and profiles and what are they called? Tab groups.
Yeah, tab groups. Yep.
I never have more than 4. Sometimes I'll hit 5 or 6 if I'm doing a lot of research about a topic, but that's still just 5 or 6 windows, not 50 or tabs. Windows wise, how many apps do you need to get something done, right? Like I'm writing, so I need one writing tool and a reference tool. I get it that other workflows require more, right? Maybe you're designing a video game and you have graphics tools and reference libraries and Safari for other types of references. So you can get to 6 or 7 or 8 windows pretty quickly, but 16 still feels like such a stretch that at that point it's madness. And then on top of that, there's Stage Manager. So you can just have 16 windows in one stage and then switch to a different stage with 16 different windows in it.
Yes, exactly.
So I don't understand that point. But at this point, it's impossible to have 16 windows on the same page at the same time. They're overlapping in a way that once you hit 5 or 6 apps, they're behind each other.
Yeah, and especially on the iPad screen. When you're external monitors, you can get there. But even then, unless you're on ultra wide, you're probably not going to hit 16 that's all visible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ultra wide's where this gets really fun, actually. Like, imagining that. Yeah.
I don't have an ultra wide to test it on, but it definitely helps to have the expanded pixel setting for your iPad. And
yep, I did change it to that. And it wasn't set to that before, and it's like, oh, this is so much nicer on the 11-inch.
So while we're on multitasking, because there's a lot here, so we've talked about windowing and positioning. Let's talk about the UI Chrome. So we have traffic lights. I keep calling them that. I don't know if anyone calls them that anymore, but we have the traffic lights.
Yeah, that's what people call them.
And,
as far as I know.
And we have the menu bar.
The menu bar is such a cool thing. Because, so in the past, I mentioned this in a prior episode, but there was a menu bar that was only accessible if you held down the command key. So now the menu bar is actually touch accessible if you're just on the tablet, which is nifty. Yes. And I think it'll encourage developers to more think out their menu bar, so it'll actually have logical things in places you'd expect versus some apps that are just like, what are you doing there, developer?
The windowing controls are accessible. So if you press and hold on the traffic lights, so what I mean by traffic lights, if anyone doesn't know, is there's these red, green, yellow buttons in the top left corner on macOS. They've always been called or referred to as traffic lights because of the coloring. And one closes, one minimizes, and one expands.
It's funny. The green one on the Mac is like, what are you actually doing? Because it behaves differently in a lot of different contexts and hold down an option. And that one's always been a bit of a conundrum. Like, what are you? Because on Windows, full screen apps are like a thing more so than on the Mac.
So you press into the traffic lights, and then you get the windowing controls. And you can pan left, pan right. So that's different from size left and right, because if you do the second option, it moves 2 windows to fill the left and right side of the screen. So if you have 2 apps open and they're just random sizes next to each other, and you use the pan and fill, it'll put the one app to fill 50% of the page on the left side, one app to fill 50% of the page on the right side. And then there's a second option that lets you move that app that you're selecting only to half of the screen. So good options there. They're also accessible via keyboard shortcuts. I can't get to work, but they're there.
Yeah. It's interesting with full screen apps. The stoplight is actually right next to the menu bar, is centered in the screen, versus the Mac. Those are always, at the left side of the screen.
So this is something I want to discuss. People are asking, so what's the deal? Why are we on our, 4th version of iPadOS multitasking? From what I could gather is a couple years ago, Apple branched off a team and said, fix multitasking on iPad. So since then, we've seen Stage Manager, and Stage Manager wasn't necessarily meant for iPad. I think they designed it for Mac, and then they discovered it worked well on iPad.
Mhm.
It became more of an iPad focus over time, but it relied on the old multitasking system on top of Stage Manager. So it was kind of this workaround in between Stage, where I'm sure Craig Federighi on Stage was sweating, like, just wait until you see what we're working on. And the separate team has been focused on optimizing and working on this forever, because you can use this system on everything running iPadOS 26, which means the A12Z iPad Pro with 4 gigs of RAM has access to the new windowing system.
That's pretty cool. And pretty awesome, actually.
It's really well done. And that's why like iPad Mini has access to it as well. They focused on optimization above everything else. I think this goes hand in hand with background app activity, which we'll get to in a minute. But I think there's another thing at play here. This couldn't exist without liquid glass material, because think of how the controls work. Go watch a video if you don't have the betas.
Mm-hmm.
If you were right, like these move around a lot, so it's not completely out of control, but if you're in a windowing mode that isn't full screen, they're in the top left, but when you're not interacting with them, if you have an iPad running iPadOS 18, iPadOS 18, the numbers are now going to mess me up going backwards in time. iPadOS 18, the top middle of an app has these 3 little it's an ellipsis basically, and you click on it and it opens a windowing function menu. That ellipsis, these 3 gray dots, is basically what you see 90% of the time in iPadOS now, but it's in the top left corner when you're not full screen, and when you hover over it, it turns into the traffic lights, and you press into it, it turns into the windowing control.
Yeah,
If
in
it's a
apps that
full
support multiple windows, there's an add another window option as well. Oh, actually, that's always there and just lets you just add another window, I guess, right? From a different app.
I haven't seen that as a separate button. Oh no, inside of the press menu, you can add a different window from there.
Yeah, that's cool.
That is nice. Then there's also right-clicking on the icon always lets you add windows as well.
Yep.
But if you full screen an app, or if you have 2 apps side by side, but they just happen to take up the entire display, the traffic lights are no longer in the top left corner. They are in the menu bar, which the menu bar only appears when you hover over the top middle of the app. And whichever app you have selected is the menu bar that appears. And then the traffic lights are on the left side, and if you hover over them, you have access to the same controls. But all of this moving around, this liquidity of the UI, couldn't happen in iPadOS 18 because the old design was flat and always visible. It didn't have this ability to shrink and resize in that way. The UI paradigm just wasn't there to enable this. So if we had introduced this 1 OS ago, it would be taking up significant space because it would always need to be visible in some way. And now it takes up no space at all because if you're not using it, it's not there.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm still getting a hang of when you open a new app, like it's full screen by default. I wish there was an option to when I drag in an app that's never been opened, let's just make that the smaller size, please.
Yeah, I don't. This is one of those conundrums. They have to open it full screen first because that's what people expect iPad apps to do. I guess there should be a power user feature to switch the toggle off, but you know how Apple is with these kinds of things.
Yeah, it may be mostly full screen, like maybe a 60% of the full screen, because I want to be able to see what other windows are open and click between them and stuff like that.
I think what does happen though is once you've set up apps and open them and size them a certain way, and this is actually per display as well, so whatever size you set it to on your external monitor and whatever size you set it to on the iPad, if you click on the icon, that's what size it goes to on that device.
Yep, and you can minimize the window and it'll come back when you do it that way. Yep.
At the same size in the same way. Now,
and we have all the Mac tiling options, which is so nice. So you have I think the Mac did the quartering and
Mm-hmm.
something that's I'm not. Oh yeah, and you have the thirds as well. So yeah, you have all of that, which is nice.
Yeah, it's really good. You can grab and throw a window to the edge.
Yes, I discovered that. That's so much fun. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Or throw it to the top and it full screens.
There's another thing I noticed as well. You can throw it. You can throw it to the dock, and that'll I think minimize it.
Yeah,
And
I
then
think so.
Yeah, and he throws the top for full screen.
This new paradigm breaks swiping between apps. Sadly, if you use the bottom bar to swipe between full screen apps, it's just gone. It's not there. That function breaks with the new interaction paradigm. Stage Manager loses that ability. Now, if you have a trackpad, you can still 4-finger swipe between stages. But
you can 4-finger swipe on the screen to go between stages.
See, I try to minimize screen touches because I don't want a bunch of fingerprints on my screen.
No, I get it. But yeah, that's still there.
Yeah.
I really miss slide over. I wish there was an option when I'm in, to have it on as a thing, or even in full screen mode. I'd love an option to enable slide over for the full screen mode.
If I turn off Stage Manager, I should get slide over back. Yes.
As an option. Like, I understand it. It's actually nice with like a 2 or 3 year old to have slide over off, but I'd love an option to let me have that on, please. Yeah.
And I wouldn't mind a new window sizing option for Mac and iPad of give me the fullest extent the app can go without hiding the dock and the stages, right?
Right.
Because full screen is full screen, everything goes away, and then you have to go to but then you go to the corner, grab the grabber, and then kind of like edge it in until everything reappears, and then let go. That's fine. It takes 2 seconds, but it'd be cool to have an option to just automatically open it that way.
And mini player. Why doesn't the music app have a mini player size class like the Mac does? That's annoying.
So that gets me into my next tidbit. Now that we have windowing like this on iPadOS, make it so we can see our home screen behind our open windows.
Our home screen.
Yeah, so on Mac, I can put widgets on the desktop and open windows, and the widgets are still there.
Oh, yes. I see what you say. So when you have an app open, the home screen disappears. Yeah, totally agree.
So now home screens can get busy, especially on iPadOS, because they're designed to be busy. So I offer a middle ground. On my external display, where you can't have a home screen, let me place widgets that appear behind the windows, right? Just like with macOS. Like, it's less busy. You can have a couple of useful widgets there. Sure. It's just another option that would be nice. I don't know how much I would personally use it, because I don't really I just don't even use a Mac, so I don't really have much input there, but it would be another nicety to have options. Maybe if I have a specific work focus with these backgrounds and these things, it would, allow for some decluttering and some specific widgets, or a clipboard history widget, which having it always run behind my windows now becomes much more useful, right? But still can't do clipboard history on iPad very easily.
No, I think that'll be there next year. They added to the Mac this year, and hopefully they'll add it to the iPad next year with a better spotlight. Are you do you wish Windows could get smaller than they currently are, or are you happy with how small they get?
Depends on the app, because some apps do have limitations on size.
Yeah.
I'm okay. Because the window Chrome can get in the way of everything else. You're not really going to get much more information out of that. Especially in an external display, once you get so small, it's kind of getting impossible to read at that point. But I'm with you. I wish I could, like on macOS and VisionOS, I want to eject the now playing screen from my music app and have that as an always-on overlay that I can minimize.
Yeah.
Stuff like that would be nice. So, sure, but I don't need anything to get that much smaller or anything like that.
I gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, I wish it could be like half it, like the height of a window. I wish I could cut that in like half almost, because it kind of like restricts you as far as how small these things can get. And I understand some of that because you want touch affordances and all that, but
so we've spent half the show on multitasking. There's more in iPadOS.
Is there? there's expose, which is part of multitasking, which I'm not sure. At school it's there, but it doesn't seem terribly different from what we had before.
No. What's nice though is because multitasking gets so complex with this windowing system, I highly recommend everyone familiarize themselves with show all open windows. This is important because preview. Oh man, preview. I still am kind of teaching myself what the heck preview's for because I've never really used it.
No, show all open windows. How do you actually get to that?
You right click on an icon and have it show. So basically,
oh, I see. Yes.
You need two things. Either it needs to be in the dock, or you need to go turn on recent apps and then have it be your active app so it is in the dock. Right click on the dock icon and say show all open windows, and across every stage and every window and everything, you'll see every open available version of that app. This is important because something like preview, every time you click on a file in files, opens a new preview window, and that can get scattered across different stages, across different iterations. I was looking one day on my iPad after installing the betas, and I had like 20 different preview windows spread across several different instances across my devices.
Yeah, I wish there's an option to just nuke all windows. I don't think there's a way to, even with shortcuts, to just close everything.
No,
because I am wanting to have a more tidy system now with Stage Manager. Because if it'll just bring stuff into stages that you used in the past. So I want a very clean system now.
Reopen closed windows is an option, but I don't have my iPad in front of me, but I don't think there is anything, because generally speaking, there's usually a close everything but this window. iPadOS does not have that.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So menu bar, amazing, and I think developers should hopefully do more with that because
it's so good.
Yeah, it's very nice, and it's got the thing where help and search through the menuing system, and
it's helped me discover things I didn't know existed in certain apps.
Yeah, totally. What else in iPadOS has caught your eye?
All right. So I have a list here of every new feature we know about. I'm looking at. So obviously, what I wanted to ask, what do you think of Liquid Glass as a whole? iOS,
overall good. I'm happy with it. Yeah.
I want to point out to everyone who hasn't interacted with the betas, the screenshots you're seeing going around the internet of, oh God, this is illegible, or look at this control center madness. Those are usually interstitials. And yes, there are ways you might find yourself where control center is clashing heavily with what's behind it. But 99% of the time, it is perfectly legible and interactable.
Playback controls in the TV app are a thing of beauty.
Oh, it's fun.
Yeah.
If you're wherever you have native video controls where those show up, it's this bubbly transparency thing you can see
nice
behind it. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's nice. I'm enjoying Liquid Glass. I know it's opinionated, but I'm so happy that Apple finally has an opinionated design again, because Google and Android and iOS have spent the last decade converging in a lot of design paradigms, and there's some Android phones that pride themselves. I believe Huawei is one of them, that get as close as they can to iOS in design on their Android native skin. And some people were just downloading new skins of Android that just turned their phones into iPhones. I think Liquid Glass has been executed in a way that is going to be, if not impossible, very difficult for Android to replicate at all because of the physicality of it. They're going to run out of memory trying to run this. So
sure,
it's going to be cool. I like that this is uniquely iPhone, and it's one of those we can only do this on iPhone kind of things. And I'm pretty happy that Apple went this direction. It's fun.
Yeah. The thing I brought up in the past, but I want to mention it to you. So on the Mac, if you have the fan option for a folder in your dock, the fan will extend beyond the limits of your display, where you can't even get to the top of it. On iPad, you can actually scroll the fan, which is unique to iPad, and it's still broken on the Mac.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never run into that. I kept the downloads folder in my dock, but I usually keep my downloads folder empty. So it's sometimes there's a couple things there, sometimes there isn't. So.
But yeah, you can scroll a big giant list on iPad, and it's so nice, and it's baffling the Mac. There's just no afforance for that.
So I'm gonna do a quick run. I'm just gonna name a few things out loud. That's features. This is iOS and iPadOS mostly. So phone app, unified layout, spam and filter screening, live translation across the system, Apple Intelligence and shortcuts, image playground, and Genmoji get ChatGPT style support. Reminders gets more Apple Intelligence based recommendations and sorting. Apple Games app, Safari redesign. Then we have messages with backgrounds, polls, and group chat typing indicators. The one I want to get to next, I think, is Journal on iPad. Photos gets customization with a new tab bar at the bottom. Yay, tab bar. FaceTime landing page with contact posters, and that means contact posters are now on iPad and in the Contacts app. Big one for me, even though they're broken in the beta. Notes gains import and export of Markdown files. Great for the people who use that, I guess. I just don't use Markdown. Passwords gets a history view on a per password setting, and we get a read pen on iPadOS. That's my full list of things.
The read pen's pretty neat. Yeah, I wish we had more stuff like that, more fountain pens and options like that.
My handwriting is atrocious, and read pen is useless in my hands, but I'm glad that it's there. But looking at this list of features, iPadOS is pretty stacked, especially with the multitasking. I mean, I know it's a lot of small individual features, but they do add up.
They do. But the multitasking is so huge, and the local capture is also very huge in the audio input that we talked about. The journal app, finally, and they did it right, and it seems very full-featured, and got Apple Pencil support in there, multiple journals, which I think is huge, because I could see people having journals that are work-related and not even like a traditional journal.
Yeah. So this is tricky. Nothing against day one, but this is a big Sherlock kind of moment. Again, what does day one do that Apple Journal does not at this point? They do a better job of capturing workouts, music, and weather into a little widget that appears at the bottom of the journal. I like that they're always there, and you don't have to add them manually. So like stuff like that is better in day one, but Apple is edging closer and closer to that base, I think.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So Journal, I've been experimenting with. Sadly, beta breaks significantly in Journal. Syncing was a problem at first. I finally forced everything to sync across my iPads and iPhone. If you create multiple journals and try to move an entry, that will never sync currently in the beta.
Oh, okay.
You can create a new journal, add and then add an entry to that journal, and that entry will sync. But if you move that entry to a different journal, that will never sync. So something about that is broken, at least on my particular devices. And another this one's dangerously broken. I had to really fight with it to regain access to Journal. Handwriting. So I went in and started writing with the pencil and wrote a paragraph or two. The way it generates the handwriting is basically an inline image, almost the way Notes does.
Okay.
And it works great. Handwriting in Journal, it's there. And I believe you can copy and paste it into text if you want to. It's basically Notes integration. That shatters Journal in so many weird ways. Once you exit that journal that has the handwriting, the handwriting disappears. It doesn't save itself, and that journal becomes inaccessible. And if you try to go back into the entry, it basically whites out the entire app. The entire UI washes itself, and you have to force quit the app, wait an indeterminable amount of time for Journal to like recalculate its settings, and then reopen it. Try your best to navigate back to that journal with handwriting in it, delete it, and it goes to a recently deleted folder, and you can't delete it from the recently deleted. It is that broken. That entry is just inaccessible, and if you open it again, it will crash the entire app again. So maybe wait on handwriting for a bit, but it does work.
Okay. The Insights screen on iPad seems very cool.
I love it. There's one other new really nice feature that day one had. It's very weird, but it is possible now to get an image in line with the text.
Okay.
So you don't. So normally you would hit a carriage return and a plus button would appear and you say add image and it would add it. Hopefully that UI comes later. But right now, you either, if on iPad it's especially useful, you could have photos open side by side and drag a photo into the text and the text moves out of the way, then you let go, and then the photo gets a grabber, you can resize the photo and the text wraps around it. Or you can add a photo to your journal, it goes to that top portion, and then you can grab it with your finger and drag it into your text, and that also works on iPhone. Again though, beta 1, little broken. Maybe wait, don't play with that yet. My recommendation is keep using Journal the way you've been using it. If you have an iPad with the beta running, open it, take advantage of typing on a keyboard on a big screen. Love that. Just don't do anything else until we get to a future beta with less bugs.
Okay, yeah. Because you are a heavy Journal user, right? That's something you still use quite a bit.
Oh, no, daily. So I actually use Journal pretty extensively. I'm excited to try the multiple journals. I went ahead and created. So I have day 1, and I figured out a way to try and import it. Basically, it was broken the way it imported, but it still did. And now on iPad, I can side by side day 1 and journal and scroll entry by entry and add what's missing, because every entry was created, but not all the content from every entry was imported. It was done through a shortcut someone made, and it was fine. But basically, what I did was I created a day 1 journal, and this is how I discovered the bug. I moved my 958 entries from day 1 to the day 1 journal, and then everything stopped syncing until I undid that move, and now everything's syncing again. So I'm just gonna have to be patient. But I have a separate journal for day 1, which will now basically be frozen in time with those entries, but I like that they have a separate location to live. I made a memories journal. So what I'm going to do with that is journaling suggestions every now and then brings up an old memory. It's like, hey, you went to Busch Gardens in 2018. Do you want to write anything about that? So what I'll do is say, yeah, create an entry, and then move that to the memories journal. Or I will manually go myself and say, here is an event from 2015 I want to write about today. And it's in the memories journal suggesting I didn't write about this on the day this occurred. So allowing me to go back and kind of revisit memories while they're, I mentioned this on Apple Insider. We're not getting any younger, and something I did in 2015 will only get further away from now. So if I can write about it now while the memories are as fresh as they're ever going to be, it's not a bad idea. So that in 20 years, I can look at that photo and say, what did I do? Oh, let me look at my journal entry on that. And of course, just to brag here, my journal streak, it broke because of a beta early on. So I lost that initial streak, but I have my weekly streak. So my weekly streak does go back to the very first day journal became available to now. So it's at 87 weeks. And I am currently at 294 days of my current streak, which is great. And I have written 179,000 words across 1.6 thousand entries.
That's pretty good. Yeah,
I'm loving it. That's rookie numbers. There are people out there with way more.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah, but I love it. Apple Journal was an excellent addition. I can only hope that we get more suggestions and third-party app suggestions. Please, Apple, make that happen.
Well, what else in iPadOS has really, been a big thing for you?
So I'm a dork for contacts because I've mentioned it maybe on this show and other podcasts. It's the brain of your device. It's how you train Siri and now Apple Intelligence on details it otherwise wouldn't have. Relationships, who people are, birthdays, anniversaries. So anytime we get anything in that respect, I'm excited. I love that contact posters is on iPads. Someone called me the other day, and my iPad mini was on my desk, and this was just so nice because everything rings when someone calls, of course. And I was working on my iPad Pro, but below my floating iPad Pro, it's on like a arm mount, is an iPad mini on a desk mount. And it just lit up full screen portrait with a contact poster of the person calling. And it was such a nice experience. I'm so happy that's there now.
And that's the side effect of the phone app coming over. Is that right?
A mixture, I think, because it's the phone app, but primarily, I think, actually, is the FaceTime app, because FaceTime also got a new design.
That's right, yeah.
So FaceTime, oh man, FaceTime used to be a landmine. So if you ever opened FaceTime before, everything on the page would call someone if you touched it. So now it is a list of contact photos, and tapping it doesn't automatically call someone, which is much nicer experience. And yes, that is on iPad. And the contact posters are broken-ish. If you go to contacts and open a contact, the posters like moved 3 feet lower, and their forehead's the only thing you can see. But I'm just happy that it's here, and the more data you can get in there, the better. I am happy to see the advancements in phone and FaceTime. I still personally think that phone, FaceTime, and contact should be one app. Honestly, iMessage should also it should just be one communications app with all of it in it, with tabs. Like, I don't know why they've never done that. It feels weird having them separate, but what they're doing here is nice. I've experienced the call screening a few times now.
Yeah, it's worked for me. I got through to a doctor that was trying to call, and then the hold system worked for me for waiting on hold, and I think those are great.
Yeah, and the call screening was cool with the spam. Something I noticed, I mentioned on Apple Insider, previously you could say block all unknown callers, which meant everyone who was unknown went to voicemail.
Yep, that's what I did.
If you turn on call screening, it's an either or. You can't send them to voicemail and screen the call.
Nope.
So now spam calls show up on my phone, and it says potential spam, and you can see them saying you now owe $40,000 for this loan or whatever nonsense. And the problem is Siri answers the phone and says, let me see if this person's available, lets that entity on the other end talk for a second to collect the text, and then it rings. So now, before I was getting no rings.
Yeah, I'm getting rings now that I have to hang up on.
Yeah, so now I'm wondering if it's worth leaving on. It's such a good feature, but I wish that there needs to be an in-between of, if it says possible spam at the top of the call, send it straight to voicemail.
Sure.
And if it says unknown number, let's do the screening, because there is a difference. Potential spam is logged by carriers, it's logged by Apple as this number is known as a spam caller, versus my doctor's office is calling me, it's an unknown number, it's unregistered in a spam database. That should get the visual screening. So tweaks need to be made, but really happy with that. Have you tested anything with Apple Intelligence or shortcuts?
No, I need to. I hear that's pretty cool.
I don't even know what I would do with it in my workflows. So I have been testing. This gets into a whole different debate, and I'm a very vocal person against a lot of the the AI stuff in the world. It's pretty
the large language models,
yeah, pretty nasty stuff how they got here, and copyright theft and destroying the internet and AI slop generation and people claiming they can replace humans with AI. It's all mostly nonsense for my personal opinion. But I do think things like Apple, at least, has been approaching it very well. Here's these tools that are mostly invisible that help you do things better. I use writing tools every day to do proofreading. That kind of stuff is useful to me. Notification summaries are useful to me. I don't need a slop generator, but I did want to test Image Playgrounds and ChatGPT's integration. And what's nice about this is because of Apple's deal with ChatGPT, any image you send to them is private. They can't save it. They can't use it for their training. It's like it never happened after you get your feedback. So that kind of greases the rails a little bit on that one for me. It feels less icky because I know if I send a family member photo or something, ChatGPT isn't getting any of that. It's still awful that it's generating an image at all, because in order to do that, they had to swallow a lot of copyright information. But again, debate for a different time. But I've been testing their anime filter for fun because I'm an anime fan, and it's still a soulless response, of course. A human artist could always do a much better caricature, but the things that it's capturing is really interesting. This seems to be GPT 4.0, not 4.0, like the version 4, which is a much older version. So it's got a lot of weird little mistakes and a lot of issues that aren't present in modern ChatGPT. But it does a good job of, if you want to make this silly thing, if you have a photo, you're like, ooh, this would be cool with this filter over it.
Yeah.
You can now do that from Image Playground privately, securely, without sharing information with ChatGPT, and you get the end result in seconds, and you can share it with your group chat. I mean, I'm not going to use this to make money. I'm not going to use this for my blog or
Sure.
Apple Insider, but people are demanding it, and it's nice that it's there, and it's now part of Image Playground. Everyone who buys an iPhone with Apple Intelligence and turns it on now has access to a private and secure version of ChatGPT and lets them do the thing they wanted to do already, which is make silly images out of their stuff.
Is there does it throttle you? Like if you try to do 100, will it say you need to wait till tomorrow?
It is a very strong throttle. So
Okay.
I get sometimes I'll get lucky and get 3 images, but you can only do it. So let's say you're in Image Playground and you add a photo. That's one call. And then you add an emoji or a description. That's another call. Like you run out instantly. So basically the only thing I've been doing is adding a photo and let it just output the anime prompt without any text prompts, because otherwise you're using up your available prompts. I did want to mention, I'm trying to frame this in my head. I'm trying to understand it ethically. It doesn't feel, other than the technology involved, it doesn't feel too different from me downloading an app called Waterlog. I don't know if you've ever used that one. That lets me convert photos into watercolor, right?
Yeah.
It makes it look like a watercolor painting. And that was machine learning. It's not AI. This is an old app. I think Waterlog came out in like 2014. They might have updated with AI. I don't know. But it feels similar in that respect, like, because like the debate is around, well, now artists aren't getting paid and all that stuff, but like I could go pay for an app in the App Store and people didn't complain about that. So I'm trying to wrap my own brain around the ethics of it, because I want to be ethical. I want to be smart. I have artist friends. This stuff it's important to me to understand, but the fact that it's there at all and that people can do it, it's a nicety. It's a good addition. It's just, Apple's own models still terrible for image generation. So good thing ChatGPT's there, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. And the preview app is nice to have. The quick look did a lot, and you could edit within quick look, but it's nice to have a real app that's full featured in there.
There's entire businesses around. You can do PDFs on iPad.
Yeah, Readle is a big one that I think may hurt a bit. It's more full featured for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they're doc.
But now you can edit documents, sign them from preview. You don't have to have a PDF editor. You don't need Adobe. So preview is a nice addition. It does basically photos and PDFs. Audio. And Quick Look still exists. You can still go to Files and say open Quick Look.
Can you drag like a thumbnail from one PDF into another PDF in preview?
I haven't tried anything.
Okay, I'm curious about that stuff, because I know on the Mac I'd play around with like combining PDFs through just dragging thumbnails around and all that.
We didn't touch on this, and so Files, I guess we danced around this one, but Files, huge update. We don't need to get into a whole lot. There's actually not that much to discuss. It's just big for users who need it. You can now select default opening points for individual files and file extensions. So if you want, I had a problem. I installed the Provenance app, and it wanted to take any text or markdown file and open it in Provenance as a game configuration tool. No way around it. That was it. Game over. Until now, I can say no. .txt opens in IA Writer. .md opens in pretext, and now we're good, right? Never have to think about that again. Or if I do have a game configuration file, I can just say always open this specific file in Provenance. Perfect.
Yeah. No, and some apps definitely need to work on their support of file types, because like Ferrite is not showing up in the list of apps that can always open a WAV or MP3. So
I noticed that like Pixelmator, so I didn't want photos to open in preview because I don't really understand the point of photos in preview. So I said open in Photomator. In Photomator, you have two file viewing options. You can view photos in the Photos app as if you were a native photo application, or you can view files and open photos from there to edit. If Photomator is currently configured in the Photos view, and you go to Files and click on an image, and it automatically opens Photomator, it imports the image to Photos and then opens it in Photomator.
Weird.
If you are in the Files view of Photomator, it opens the file in Files view in Photomator and edits it directly. So that's just one of those things you have to keep in mind if you're doing something like that. Until, of course, Photomator, now it's an Apple app, so if it ever gets updated, they'll have to reconfigure that setting. But just something to point out.
Yeah.
Did you go in and add a bunch of tags to your folders to give them different colors?
No, I haven't played around with that stuff. Do you think there's a new power with multitasking and whatnot will inspire any different iPad hardware design in the future? Like, will we eventually see support for 2 external monitors in future iPad Pros, stuff like that?
Clamshell mode needs to happen. I feel like that's the next checklist. So blissfully lovely that we are now at the weird niche things of iPadOS.
Exactly. Yeah, we got the good stuff.
Yeah, got so much good out of this update. But yes, clamshell mode's an obvious hopeful. I think just out of it, honestly, they should go ahead and do a external display support update in 26. I don't think they will, but M4 iPad Pro, no reason why it shouldn't be able to run its display and 2 external displays.
Because the MacBook Air does this.
Mm-hmm. And then there's also, but I'm with you. External display support could be much broader now. I would love to see universal control from an iPad Pro that lets me move my cursor to my iPad Mini without a Mac involved. I don't think it'll ever happen because Apple doesn't view that software that way.
Or an iPad to another iPad.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think that's...
Gotcha.
That would be great. That would be, because I'm an iPad user.
Or an iPad to the Vision Pro. Use the iPad's keyboard for the Vision Pro. Let's do it.
Yeah, we should be able to bring the virtual iPad into Vision Pro. I know it's kind of redundant, but still would be nice.
Still nice. Yep.
Because then you're right. The connected keyboard and mouse would be now part of Vision Pro.
Yes, which is it would be a nice lightweight device to have for that.
But yeah, to take it further, larger iPads I think are obvious. We've heard rumors before of getting iPads closer to 17 or 20 inches. And that's that's an incredible size. It wouldn't be a handheld iPad anymore.
Desktop
it would definitely
iPad,
It would definitely be what Microsoft attempted to do briefly. They had that giant display that could fold down. So iPad Studio is what we dubbed it back in the day.
Yeah, I would love something big like that, yeah.
I don't know. I guess I would like that because I have an L-shaped desk. So I suppose on my right side in tabletop tablet mode, I could have this large 20-inch display and then have it thunderbolted to my studio display. And so have the classic windowing mouse and keyboard in front of me. And then I could just swivel in my chair to the desktop iPad and touch and pencil around. Yeah, I could see workflows doing that. I think Apple should think about, so larger and more external displays. But this gets to the weird thing, and a lot of people pointed out, this could mean foldables. Well, yes. I still think foldables it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's a fad. I mean, if Apple does release a foldable, it's not like I'm over here oh, I was wrong. Sure, I don't care to be wrong on this one.
Yeah, it's cool tech. It seems delicate, and I don't know.
Foldables made sense in 2019 when they first started really getting out there. But now with Vision Pro and now with Google XR, Meta's efforts, it's clear where we're going. And the solution that foldables were looking for was, we need more screen real estate and something that can fit in a smaller space. So why not unfold to a bigger display? But now with wearables over your eyes, we have infinite displays that we always have on us. And that necessity of needing a pocket device become larger is less and less. And they're so prone to breaking and other issues, and the inherent crease and the software limitations, like I think we're past the point of needing foldables. Apple's been working on one for a while. I'm sure like that's true, but whether or not it ever needs to release and be this $2,500 niche device, I don't really see why they need to do it.
Sure. No, I can understand that.
But yeah, I'm with you though. This windowing system does feel like we could see new form factors. Now,
yeah, like a 16-inch iPad or something like that would be more portable, and the MacBook's there, so it seems like we could do that now.
well, we can close up on this because I think it's important. Craig Federighi did several interviews, but the repetition of this point was Macs are Macs because of their form factors and how they're used. They are primarily the keyboard and mouse product ecosystem. iPad is primarily the touch ecosystem, and I'm glad Craig said this because it aligns with my use case and a lot of people's. Is that iPad? Yes, it is the touch first ecosystem, but it is also the most modular ecosystem, meaning you can go from iPad as a tablet to a drawing device to a laptop to a desktop, or floating display, gaming tablet with controller attachments. Like, it's this naked robotic core idea we've discussed before, and that was what Craig Federighi is leaning into. So that's why I'm like, I don't think we're going to get an iPad that is permanently attached to a keyboard as a device option.
No,
right?
But you could get a bigger one, and that would allow for different touch experiences, having a nice big screen for drawing on and all that. But it becomes more unwieldy the bigger it gets. Like the 11-inch iPad Pro is so nice because it is still a very touch-first tablet. The 13-inch, it's still, you can still do it, but it's less. The bigger you get, the less friendly it is to becoming a pure tablet. But it also opens up different things. Like with the Apple Pencil, the bigger it gets, the more fun the Apple Pencil gets. Like a 16-inch screen, that'll be a much better drawing experience than 11 or 13.
You can get up to about 20 inches at 16 by 10-ish before it becomes unportable. Because once you get about to 19 or 20 inches, that's about the limit of what laptop bags are.
You're right, yeah.
But imagine having just the iPad in a kickstand form factor in this bag, and you take it out and put it on your coffee shop table, and it would be enormous. But it'd be like the guy with the iMac in the coffee shop. But then you pull out your keyboard and trackpad Bluetooth devices and set it in front of it, and now you have this incredibly thin, incredibly portable, large display that you just pulled out of a bag. Maybe not a keyboard folio form factor because it would unbalance itself and fall over, but have the iPad on a kickstand and a separate keyboard and trackpad.
Yeah, have like a Nintendo Switch style stand with it.
Up to 16 to 20, like 16 might be the limit, but 20 inches is the absolute limit. Like, that is doable. That's realistic, and yeah, like it could be your workstation, or like you said, just the Nintendo Switch. Pull that thing out, sit it on a table, and pull out a PlayStation controller.
Sure.
Or pull out 2 PlayStation controllers and play 2-player on this large display that you can just carry everywhere. Like, it's so doable. Or now I can connect my Nintendo Switch to that 20-inch iPad and have a 20-inch portable display, right? Like, there's just so many ways
Wes, do you think iPadOS 27 will get Joy-Con 2 support for the iPad where you can use it as a mouse?
See, this is weird. I don't know how mouse support works in Joy-Cons, so there's a part of me that wants to say, I wonder if it works now. I don't think it does.
It doesn't, and I don't think the Joy-Con 2s compare to anything else right now. There is no way to do that.
That's a software update.
Yeah, for
sure. Nintendo will have to update their system. If I had to guess, yeah, it would be like an iPadOS update and probably a significant one. They could do it in 26.
That'd be a fun mouse to have, just a little Joy-Con as a thing.
It's not the most accurate mouse.
No, it works on weird surfaces in a way that other mice aren't as good with. That's where it excels. Like your
lap.
Exactly. Yeah, it worked. It's the most portable friendly as far as that's concerned. Yeah.
Or you could do kind of a fakey Vision OS-y style pointer where you're using the gyroscope to move the cursor.
Sure. Yeah.
But I don't know, like, yeah, the more hardware the merrier. I could see this being ultimately Apple adding a specific settings menu that allows you to turn on controller mode or switch to mouse mode in settings, and then say, now this is a mouse. And then I think I would still use a trackpad though, because trackpads are the best way to navigate iPadOS.
I agree. The swipe gestures and all that. Yeah.
One last question: what do you think of the new cursor?
Kind of sad, but it seems like the old way of the cursor morphing the different things is still there. Like in Fair8,
Yes,
I can hold down Option, and in Fair8, if you go in the calendar, it turns back into the circle for each date. So it seems like as long as they don't remove the morphing ability, I think I'm okay with it. But the ability for your cursor to morph and become different based on situation is what I love most about it. So as long as that remains, I think I'm okay.
I think that's going to remain because that's a very iPadOS-y thing, and it's baked into the operating system. I like the cursor. It works. It shows better what it is. Sometimes you lose that circle a little bit in the UI. So having it be a little bit more sharp and a little bit more findable, I think, more substantial, because the transparent circle is very transparent.
Yeah. It's easier to find the new one.
Yeah, and Vision OS is still a blob. It's still a circle. I wonder if we're going to see its cursor turn into a pointer.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, but either way, I'm fine with it. It's not, terrible, but it's still not quite a mouse. It does feel maybe a tad small, but I'm glad it's there.
They should add the thing, Riley was mentioning this in the last episode, where you shake the mouse and it
gets gigantic.
Big. Yeah, that's not there in iPadOS. That should be added.
Yeah, so lots of fun little updates. iPadOS, I think, was the biggest winner this year.
It closed out the show for Apple.
Yeah, and that's notable that they put it last for that reason. I mean, iOS, it was a big update, mostly because of the material redesign. But if you really examine iOS, it's mostly feature updates for specific apps, not and the ecosystem-wide update was the redesign. So iPadOS really was the big winner here.
Yeah, I'm very glad the camera app icon is back to where it started back in 2007.
That's really cool. I like it.
So
When
nice,
I saw that in the keynote, and I'm like, they changed it. Like that's
I don't think
nice.
most users will remember that's how it used to be, but that's how it used to be, guys.
Yeah, I really wish Apple would give us alternative icons on native apps.
Sure. Yeah.
We'll never get that.
No. And yeah, the map stuff is all good. Yeah, I love the mail app icon. That's my favorite of the redesigns of the icons. It's a shame the music app still can't import music. Let's have it become more of an iTunes thing.
It's still just, it's now though, imagine you're an iPad owner that wants to import music. How many people on earth are trying to do that? 4, 5?
Yeah, I'm one of the 4 or 5. I mean, I'm not going to be updating my Mac until I get a secondary Mac, because I want FireWire support so I can sync my 2001 iPod, which I still do a couple times a year. And FireWire support was removed, evidently. So
fair enough.
I'm stuck. Yeah. I'm stuck. The latest OS. Yeah.
So I think this is related to iPad tangentially. What do you think of the death of Intel? Because this means a couple of things. This is the last year we support Intel and macOS. And next year has been confirmed, so macOS 27 is the last year Rosetta is supported, which means starting in macOS 27 and starting in 2027, developers have to target native Apple stuff for Apple Silicon, which should also mean if everything's running natively on Apple Silicon, we get more support for iPad ports of apps as well.
I hope that's the case. Yeah, it's going to be a weird period because I think there are some apps that are just kind of abandonware, and that's going to suck for Mac users that are using these abandoned apps that are still useful on their Macs. Yeah.
My one chief complaint with iPadOS that wasn't addressed during the keynote, which it can be addressed at any time. It does not need a WWDC. Pro apps. We still have apps like Photomator. And then you look at Mac, and it has Pixelmator Pro. you still have the Logic Pro version of iPad, right? Like iPad version on, right? Like this iPad version of thing needs to stop. Like I get that maybe it can't have every feature of the desktop app, but that doesn't mean it should be an iPad version. So that wasn't addressed.
Yeah.
And I think that it's up to developers mostly, but we really need more full-size Pro app, because if it runs on a MacBook Air M1 through M4,
we got the menu bar now,
it should run on an iPad Pro. Period.
Yeah, totally.
No
Agree.
excuses. No excuses. And last thing. Games are still 4x3 on an external display. So get on it.
That's wild.
Get on it. Yep.
Yeah. The PlayStation Remote Play app resizes to an external monitor so you can be natively there if you're remote playing from PlayStation.
Yeah.
But yeah, games are they're well, can games be optimized for external monitors? It's probably just the developer not optimizing thing, like because they're not expecting that.
It's still weird. So as far as I know, if the developer specifically targets external display use, it will go to 16:9. But that API originally existed as an AirPlay function to AirPlay from your iPad to an Apple TV. And I don't know. So right now, I think Real Racing actually removed this, but Real Racing 3 is a really old game. It came out in like 2015. And the original versions of Real Racing 3, which it's a service game, so it's still going. It's still called Real Racing 3 for some reason. If you AirPlayed to Apple TV, it would be 16:9, and your gas pedal and steering wheel would be on the iPad.
Yeah.
And because of that, if you did that on an externally connected display, Real Racing 3 would 16:9 on a external display, connect to a physical controller. It all worked as expected. So problem is that that's an old API, probably deprecated. And currently with the new infinite resizing thing, it should really just be up to developers. And I think it's a niche use case. So that's probably why they're not doing it. But I think it really is just up to developers to say full screen into 16:9 instead of 4:3. And perhaps because of the new windowing system and the more infinite adjustability, I have a very strong feeling that by happenstance, total accident, we're going to get full screen games. Because now developers are going to have to account for what happens if this person puts this in side-by-side mode. What happens if they full screen it on this sized iPad? And because of that, those UI stretchings and changes that they're going to have to make, it by happenstance, hopefully, will allow full screen external apps as well. So we'll see.
Yep, for sure. Well, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great catching up and diving into all this iPad goodness with you. So appreciate the time.
Yeah, no, always happy to come here. And I think what you're trying to get at is if you want to get a hold of me on the internet, I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Mastodon. You can read me at Apple Insider. I write there pretty much every day of the week. And I'm also kind of keeping up with a blog. I really need to write more in it, but there's not enough hours in the day. But I have committed to one post a week that is kind of an overview, not necessarily a summary, more of me inserting myself into a summary of the goings on in the week of Apple. Here's this news piece, here's what I think about it, and that kind of stuff. So if you go check that out. I'm thinking about turning on subscriptions because of the consistency that kind of would work as a newsletter, but I don't know. I'm still playing around. That's more of a personal project, but anyway, you guys can always find me on Blue Sky. I'm pretty active there.
And that blog's at hilly.tech?
Yeah. It's Ghost, so it's weird. You have to put the, I think, www, at the front. Or, you should be able to find the link on my website or in the show notes, stuff like that.
Cool deal. Well, thanks. Really appreciate your time.
Yep, no problem.
Well, that's my discussion with Wes, all about iPadOS 26. Once again, check his blog out at hilly.tech. All the links will be in the show notes. And if you'd like to support this podcast, you can do so over at patreon.com/iPadPros or by subscribing in Apple Podcasts. With that, I'll talk with everyone again real soon.